Normally tutorial video stuff is saved for the paying members, but this isn't really a tutorial. This is just kind of a tip. I have a straight razor customer coming. I didn't plan on doing this. I had to break open a box to get my high-end stones out to do straight razors. And since he's coming today, typically straight razors need straight razor stones, water stones like these, whether they're traditional water stones or like these, the composite stones like this. Typically, those stones have to stay in water like overnight. So these stones, like the Naniwa and the Chaucera stones, not really. They're like splash and go. People say that you do kind of have to soak them. This is a true splash and go stone. This one. This is that Shapton cream that I have, the 12,000 grit cream. Now, with these water stones like this Kingstone 1000 grit, you do need to soak them to make sure that they absorb enough moisture to actually perform the way you want them to, hold the slurry, not dry out while you're sharpening, and you don't have to continually add water. So, like I said, typically that takes, most people say overnight. That's about optimal. That's about the best, is when you do it overnight. But I will teach you a trick. So guys, if you have a food saver and you have some of these containers and they're big enough to fit your stones in it, what you can do is this. And I'm gonna show you with this stone because this is what I'm gonna use first. So what you wanna do is, you wanna fill this up with water, and then you want to put the stone in it, and then you want to use your connection hose for that container, and you're just basically going to suck the air out and replace it with water. I'll show you how it works, watch. So like I said, you fill the container with water, and you put this in, and what you're going to see is this thing's going to start bubbling. See how it's bubbling? Well, what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to take a little bit of that water out, a little bit of that out, just enough to cover that stone. Put that lid on it. I'm going to let it do its thing for a second, but I'm going to connect it, and then I'll show you what happens in a second. Now guys, that's just that stone, and it's typically, you don't see that much air coming out of that stone because this stone has been out of water for weeks now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna suck all the air out. And you're gonna see it's gonna suck all that air out. Eventually we'll reach a point where this stops. Now, as you can see, now you got air coming out of the entire stone. You can see the whole thing starting to form bubbles on it. What you're doing is you're pulling all the air out of the voids in that stone. You can see now there's more bubbles. There's bubbles coming out of here, and that's what you would typically get. That's what you would typically get in a bucket. You would slowly see bubbles coming out of the entire stone instead of just at the seam. But it takes a while for that to all happen. It's really slow. What you're seeing is just a rapid soak. That's what I call it. I do the same thing with steaks. I have a flat container, and if I want to marinate steaks, you can do the same thing. It's the same basic concept. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before, but this is a really easy way to do a rapid soak on water stones and have it ready to go much faster than you would typically expect. So now the pump is stopped, but that's still sealed. That's still in a vacuum. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna repeat that process. And you can see those little bubbles coming up out like that. You don't typically see that when you soak your stones. That's a very slow process for those little bubbles to form. And it's gonna continue to pull air out until it loses its seal. And you're just gonna continue to do that. You can pre-soak a stone in about 10 minutes doing it this way. And so what I'll do is, now that it's under vacuum, if I release this pressure, release the vacuum, now it has, that space where the vacuum was, has sucked all the air in, and I'm just gonna repeat that whole process, like 2 or 3 times. It literally only took about 3 minutes to get that ready. So let's go ahead and we'll pump it again. And you can see it's starting to pull, it had stopped bubbling, and now it's pulling that extra air out of that. That's all you're doing, is just replacing the air that was in that stone with water. This is the same process that you use for for doing stabilized wood. So you get the resin, the stabilizer resin, and you put it in a vacuum and you suck it in, and then you pump all the air out till the bubbles start coming out, and then you release the vacuum. And then you do that several times. And then once you're happy with like the amount of air you're seeing come out of that, then you just let it sit for 24 hours. That's for stabilizing wood. And then you put it in your oven and you do the heat. But basically, if you have a vacuum pump, like a vacuum chamber, if you do resin, any of those things you can use, and you can basically cut the time it takes for you to get your stones ready for sharpening by hours, like literal hours and hours. So just a little bit of supplemental content for the week. I'm not sure when I'm gonna put this up, but it's gonna go up probably today or tomorrow. Guys, I'm coming back in. I know I already filmed the end, so I'm gonna throw this in closer to the front after I did the two-sided stone. This 1,000 grit stone, you can see much more clearly the effect you get when you do the vacuum, because it doesn't have that seam in the middle, and it's a little bit coarser stone, so you're able to see the actual effect. And what I wish I had shown you guys was before and after levels of water. So we're gonna do that as well. So I'm gonna just basically take this, mark this container where the water is before I put the stone in, and then put the stone in and then show you where it is after. Because it's dramatic how much water actually absorbs into that stone. And before anybody says anything, I know I'm not using my gimbal, but the problem is my gimbal is off with someone who's trying to fix it. There's an issue with the gimbal. One of the motors is stuck, and he said, hey, you know, it's already broke. If I can't fix it, you're out nothing. So we're gonna take a look at that. We may be buying, with the YouTube money, a new gimbal. So I'm just gonna mark this right here where the water level is approximately at the beginning. Then we'll put the stone in. And you see, you know, of course, water level went up. We're gonna see how much water this actually absorbs. That would help if I hooked the hose up. So like I said, there you go. You can see that air, those small little bubbles of air that weren't coming out before. It's displacing. Yeah, that's a lot more dramatic on this stone because it doesn't have that middle seam. Yeah, you can see, I mean, it's just, it would take literally hours. Now, there still is going to be, you know, I'm going to soak these for a couple more hours before this guy shows up. But this is a real good way to get a jump start on stuff with your stones. What I was saying is a jump start on this if your stones were really dry. Like I said, packing up to move, I put all my expensive stones in a box. I had to open it up and break them out because I have a customer coming and he really needs this done. All right, guys, I cycled that through like 3 times. So we're going to look at how much water that actually absorbed. So I haven't looked yet. So I'm going to there's no pressure. There's no vacuum left on the thing. So let's turn this around and take a look. So as you can see, when I pull this stone out, I mean, you can see it there that the water level, and I would imagine that's because this stone doesn't sit all the way in. That water level dropped here. I think it got pulled up into this part of the stone because this water level actually dropped visibly before I even pulled the stone out for the displacement. But let's pull it out and see how much this stone actually absorbed. That's a significant amount of water that stone absorbed. So as you guys can see, that's a significant amount of moisture. And if you were in a rush and needed to do something, it would be a lot easier to pre-soak your stones that way, because I'm going to tell you, I run a sharpening service and I have to keep stones in water a lot of the time. And it's a weird, you know, what am I going to do with them? Do I keep them outside in a bucket? Do I keep them in a house? Well, as you guys can see, and as Fuller Fanatic was kind enough to point out how cluttered my kitchen is, well, it's because we got 3 people here with 3 different kinds of dietary restrictions. My wife's Japanese. There's a lot of stuff that goes with that. And it's a tiny kitchen, so it's cluttered. So do I put it in the living room where somebody's going to walk through and kick it over? Do I keep it in the kitchen where somebody's going to walk through and kick it over and add more clutter and space to this already tiny kitchen that we have? Because the kitchen and dining room combined are smaller than my daughter's bedroom? Or do I put them outside in a bucket and then they get filthy dirty and then I got to clean the stones before I even use them? So this is a good workaround to be able to keep your stones somewhere like in a drawer like I do, and then just do a pre-soak and allow those stones to do it that way and suck up that moisture, and then just minimize your time. And then I don't have to keep them in water as much. And they don't stay out of water. So they'll be, the most that those stones are ever out of water is like maybe a day. Usually, but they've been out of water for like 3 weeks. So now they are really, really dry. They were thirsty. So on top of the fact I pre-soaked them, I am gonna, like I said, I am gonna soak those in that bucket for a couple hours before. But this is just a little workaround that you can do for these things if you're a sharpener or if you have stones, but you don't wanna have to keep, you don't have to keep a bucket full of them in a garage. You know, they're gonna get knocked over and spilled. Some of these stones are expensive. They're fragile. They are fragile. These stones chip and break. The stones that you saw today, they're not real expensive stones, but still, you know, why ruin something that you could use, you know? So just a little pointer, just little tips. Usually this stuff's reserved to paying members, but I figured everybody deserved it. And before you can comment on the quality of the video, Fuller Fanatic, my videos are shot this way for a reason, because I like them to feel like we're just a bunch of friends hanging out, just sitting around a table talking about knives and stuff. So with that being said, guys, if you like the videos, give them a thumbs up. If you don't like them, give them a thumbs down. This is just a little impromptu thing that I knew I had to do, and I was like, why not film it? So there's probably not going to be anything in the corners this time. If you really like the videos, you can drop an applause, which is basically a tip, or you can join the channel below and support and things like that, because there's a chance I'm going to have to buy a new gimbal. So, guys, take it easy, and I'll see you next time. Maybe there'll be some extra content next week.